Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the SDHQ Podcast. I'm Noah Kopetsky, the creator of Steam Deck HQ, here again with Richard, who is also known as Fan the Deck on YouTube. How you doing, Richard?
I'm doing great, man. How are you? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, no, it was very eventful.
I just realized it's your wife's first Mother's Day.
Yes, though here it's a different culture. So I live in Indonesia, and they actually don't celebrate those kinds of holidays, that kind of thing. They see it more as like, at least it could be the culture here. It could just be my wife, but we see it more as like, instead of celebrating like Mother's Day, just like celebrating mothers on one day, why put it to one day? Why not just be something? It doesn't have to be a special thing. It's just celebrate your mom.
Every day.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
We did the same thing for Valentine's Day. It's not a thing here. So
okay,
it's that kind of
cool.
it's that kind of thing. But it was a good weekend. I got a lot done. We just finished our Life Eater review, which we posted, and man, that's a game.
So I still haven't played it, but I am a big fan of, and I always am wary of how I pronounce his name, but I believe it's Zeliver.
Honestly, I did not. I should have asked him when I met him at when I met him at the Day of the Devs at GDC.
Mm-hmm.
I did not ask. I just go by the studio, which is Strange Scaffold. Love their games. And Life Eater is a weird one. So, because like you're playing as the antagonist and you're the killer, who's like, and the entire game is about abducting people.
So I love. What was the last one?
El Paso.
Elsewhere.
I think it's
So you think I'm gonna love Life Eater?
It's very different. If you like the writing, like the way they tell stories, then you'll like Life Eater. But it's like a completely different game, because El Paso Elsewhere is like a third-person shooter, whereas Life Eater is more like a puzzle. So
that does seem consistent for the studio too, right? Like all the game, like the first game in Airport for Aliens, currently run by dogs. Like that's very very different from the other stuff. And then like this person Zelaver, he was the writer, I believe, on what's the indie that was really big for a while.
You gotta be more specific.
That was the most vague description of all time.
Like
it's the really weird looking game that's like OS simulator, right? So forget it. I'm gonna remind you when I think
please, because I'm curious. I'm very curious what it is you're talking about, because I have no idea. Like, I'm like, there's so many like big indie games. So like, which one could you possibly be talking about? You have to like look at his credits just to see.
Could literally be anything. I
really
gave the vaguest description I could. Yeah, but I'll come back to you.
All right. Well, I say now that we got some introductions, got my new mic all set up, which hopefully it sounds so much better than the last 2 episodes. Like, this is a specific mic, apparently specific for podcasting. It's a Shure. Oh God, I've already forgotten, but I forgot the model. But
MV7, right? Like MV7.
Yes,
something?
That's the one, and hopefully it sounds a lot better. Let's go ahead and get started with some games that had some updates that improved the performance or just the playing it on the Steam Deck. So starting us off, Terrascape got some controller support, which, if I remember correctly, I wrote an article about, but I don't remember it right now, of course. I'm pretty sure it's one of those games where you're building vehicles and you're like going around an open world, and you're getting new parts to consistently build your vehicle. Kind of like it's styled similarly, reminds me of Minecraft. So it's like they're like voxel blocky.
It looks like a city. Terrascape looks like a city builder.
So then I am completely thinking of a different game. What am I thinking of? I just described an entirely different game, and now I feel really bad because like I was like, I don't know that.
our memories today are I needed another coffee, so this will hopefully help.
I really hope so. I'm pretty sure it starts with Terra as well. I'm looking it up right now because it's going to bug me if I don't find it.
The game while you're looking that up,
Terra Tech.
Terra Tech. All right, cool. Yep. Terra Tech.
See, I was thinking of that game, and they both start with Terra, so
yep.
I feel a little bit better. Other than that, Indica, and that's what I'm calling it. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it, and if anyone from 11-Bit Studios is watching, I'm so sorry. Got an update specifically that improved Steam Deck performance, which was actually something that I noted when I played the demo was not so great. So hopefully this really does improve, and I like seeing like a specific patch that focuses more on just improving the performance and playability on the Steam Deck.
That's another game that's just so weird in the best way.
Right? It's like one of those like it's super, super cool to I love very narrative heavy, story driven games, and it is perfect for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Other than that, the new early access game Farm Together 2 did get its first hotfix, which improved or found a way to actually detect how much time has passed when you go sleep in game and then you resume. So it'll kind of tell like how much time passed, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
There was this also what is it? A turn-based strategy game called Headquarters World War II, which changed the UI scale for the Steam Deck. So it should be actually a little bit smaller, which I was surprised by because like at first, usually when I think about a game that's getting a UI change, usually it's to increase the UI to make it more visible on the Steam Deck. But this one seems to have decreased it, which I thought was
interesting.
It was an odd. I assume it's because there's so much on the screen that maybe if it's too big, it cuts things off. But even still, like it's just that's a weird. See, it's like seeing it go backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
But I haven't tried it yet. Hopefully, it's still playable. But it's just a weird thought to go. It seems like it's going backwards.
Yeah, I would never have considered like these sort of games, right? Like Steam Deck friendly. And I've seen the company behind this, the publisher Slitherine. I've seen them around for a long time, and I imagine that they're like like have a big like niche fan base. So if they're able to play this on the Steam Deck, then that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then Men of War 2, which is coming out in 2 days, was going to be always online, but due to popular community demand, they're going to be getting an offline mode after launch. It should be coming in a post-launch update, which I'm really happy to see because Men of War 2 is really cool. It's one that we actually want to review. So we're looking forward to like testing it on the Steam Deck and everything. And the problem is in our build. So we do have a key. So we are reviewing it. But we can't actually do much with it just yet because the campaign is coming in the launch build, I assume, because right now we only have access to like online games. And because it's so restricted right now, we can't find one. So so like
are you able to play like a versus a bot or anything like that?
I've been looking. I haven't been able to find anything, but there was like a one where it was like it seemed like it was against bots, but it started searching for a server. So I was like, okay, so more than likely can't do that one yet either. But it looks really cool, and I have a lot of hope for it, especially with the offline mode being, put in later. So I do feel more. I feel like it's going to be one of those where it will be really fun to play on the Steam Deck, even though it is one of those like more top-down games that is generally harder. And then just I feel like I've talked about them like every single episode so far, which is only 3. That's not that many episodes, but I feel like I have just because they have so many developments. no rest for the wicked. They've already started talking about their next patch, and I wouldn't really bring it up because they've brought up performance improvements in almost every patch. So it's like, okay, it's the same thing over and over. But they are bringing in some memory improvements, which is the biggest issue with the Steam Deck so far, since it uses so much memory. So right now, you try to play it, more than likely it'll cause a crash. But if after this patch, if the memory is reduced enough, it shouldn't cause any more issues, and everything will be perfectly fine and very playable. I did talk to them a little bit, and they mentioned that they can't give me a specific like amount of memory that they're saving, but they do mention it's going to be significant. So it could be like, I don't think it'll be more than half, but like I don't think it'll get close to that, like going from 16 RAM requirement to 8. Like that's nuts. If they do that, I'm blown away. I don't think it'll get to that though. I think it'll go down to like 12, which is already a big improvement. So, they also mentioned that SteamOS 3.7 is helping with performance a lot, which I found really odd. So he mentioned, he mentioned that the future SteamOS update was going to help, and then I brought up 3.6, and he actually mentioned 3.7. So I thought that was odd. So apparently there's something in 3.7 that helps performance a lot, according to them.
So, but if memory is a problem, right? Something that was supposedly introduced in 3.6, so still a little confused as to where maybe 3.7, but something that was introduced in 3.6 was just changing the way that you get more memory, right? So like ZRAM versus swap. So instead of using virtual memory, you kind of compress what's in memory and continue to use RAM. You can do both, right? You can kind of prioritize one over the other or something like that, but you can still use both. So maybe by putting some more priority on ZRAM, maybe that helps them out. And I wonder if maybe that's something that Valve is still just tweaking behind the scenes, and maybe on 3.7 it's a little further along.
It's possible. It could also be one of those things, because I don't know what's exactly changed in the main channel for 3.7 to really give that much of a difference. Like there's a lot of, so let's segue into it. Since 3.6 is in the preview channel now, so we can actually play around and test it, and we have a change log of what's actually changing. And I would say it's pretty significant. I wouldn't say it's like a 3.5 significant. Like it's not going to be one that's so visibly different like 3.5 was, but there are some really great features that were added into it. And like you said, the RAM, the way RAM is being allocated and all that. We also have the graphics driver changes, which kind of brings in performance improvements across the board. So it was updated to a Mesa 24.1, and that should be pretty significant. I also thought it was really cool that they improved the speed of the OS updates, and it was actually detailed in another article. I was going to write about it myself, but I actually saw it originally on Gaming on Linux, and I thought it was just really cool that they've kind of improved the speed of just how the OS will update by like 30 to 50%. Like, so it should be going significantly faster. It's one of those where like you don't really notice it, but it's really nice when it's like shown, and then you can start noticing it. You're like, oh shit, it is. It's much quicker now.
And then also a benefit from that is that if it fails like midway through the initial download and install, that the like subsequent download should resume gracefully, right? So it kind of picks up where it left off, things like that. So that new update, which to your point, it wasn't in their release notes, but you could see it on the article where they wrote about it, or one of the developers wrote about it on Collabora.com. So that was pretty neat.
No, overall, I like that they also updated the Linux kernel, which was nice. They updated KDE, all the base stuff. They're just kind of bringing everything up to speed, basically. So it should have some great improvements just across the board, just from that too. So having a new driver, having a more recent Arch Linux base, the more updated Linux kernel, update graphics driver. You mentioned this last time, but in being able to improved display uniformity or Mura compensation.
Yes,
which is something that you mentioned last time, which I thought was a nice. I didn't really. It was not something that was apparent to me as much. Mm-hmm. So,
and from my understanding, it's different for different people, right? Not just their perception, but I mean, like the actual quality of the display. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, there's 2 different displays at least that Valve is using for the OLED, so there's that, and then it may just be if you got a higher quality version of one of those displays, then maybe it just wouldn't be as apparent. And then different games, I think, also kind of affect it differently. Interestingly, it's enabled, right? Like the compensation that Valve developed in is enabled by default. You can kind of disable it if you like, but it's enabled by default. So it should just look better if it was a problem for you before.
Well, that makes sense. And it's nice. It's nice to have some, I guess, improvements to it. The other thing I thought that was really cool that they tagged in there, like, the overclocking controls for the LCD Steam Decks. Yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting. I did not expect them to go into overclocking, but
no, not at all.
What do you think? Why did they only do the LCD model? Like, why not just put in overclocking controls for all models at that point?
So I haven't looked into this at all, but I would suspect that it just wasn't as ready, right? Okay. So they've probably been working on LCD longer. They've probably seen sort of like where it falls down and things like that. So I think this overclocking, even more than undervolting, right, is just somewhere where they want to, I imagine, like minimize the liability, right? If you mess up your machine, right? So they probably want to have controls that are more stringent than your typical overclocking tools. And so they want to set whatever that threshold, that maximum threshold is. They want to be very careful about it, I imagine.
That makes sense then. Yeah. And then one final thing to touch on, because the list is very long and highly recommend just checking it out, is the usually the big SteamOS updates, they add a lot. But I thought it was interesting. This one updated the dock, the official Steam, Valve dock for the deck. And now it has better compatibility for high refresh rate VR or variable refresh rate displays and support for HDMI CEC features. So you should be able to wake up the TV through, through that dock as well as the remote input and switch input using those features. And I thought that was cool that they've started adding support for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and interestingly, this isn't something I saw in the UI, but they also spoke about how they're going to they basically added mechanisms to configure which Bluetooth devices, which types of Bluetooth devices are going to wake the system. So by default, Steam Deck OLED, Bluetooth controllers can wake the system. But based on this wording, presumably in the future, it wouldn't just be controllers. If you set it that way, it could be headsets or keyboards or mice, which just paired with that CEC compatibility, greater VRR compatibility, greater Bluetooth compatibility too with A2DP and BAP profiles. I think they're hinting at something, but
what do you think? What do you think they're hinting at?
All right, so HDR, right? HDR, they needed HDR and SteamOS 3.5 to make Steam Deck OLED a thing, right? There are things in here and things in the backlog or things coming soon, like NVK explicit sync, right? That point to, these are things that you would need to support a Steam Deck console or Steam machine.
All right, my man. you segued into the topic I wanted to discuss the most today.
Yep. Got to grab that water.
Yep. I'm ready. So recently I wrote an article. It was an opinion article on Steam Deck HQ going into why I feel a Steam machine would be perfect right now. And why, learning from how they released the Steam Deck, how it would be so successful compared to when it was originally released. And I mean, I've actually, Liam of Gaming on Linux posted about it wanting a Steam Deck 2 more. So I think he and I are going to have a debate at some point soon as well.
I love it.
Because I'm excited. I'm very adamant. I want a Steam machine. But I think with what they know now, what they've learned, it's the perfect time to bring a Steam machine back. And I can understand why people are, I guess, a little bit against the idea of being like, oh, we have a Steam Deck though, but that's the purpose of a Steam machine isn't to replace a Steam Deck. Right now, I think a lot of people see the Steam Deck as a companion, a companion to, a desktop PC or a PlayStation or an Xbox, just how they see the Nintendo Switch more as a companion versus a full-on console. So I think the majority of people would utilize a Steam machine, and I think it would fit perfectly with the Steam Deck. With the Steam Deck, we've had so many improvements to like SteamOS and Proton, and when the Steam machine first came out, those were very lacking. So I think those improvements have made it extremely more accessible to play almost every game on Linux. And then the PC ecosystem is another big thing. If you have a Steam Deck, you're buying games on Steam. If you have a Steam machine, you have those games already. Cross-platform purchasing is, right there. If you have the Steam Deck and you have a PlayStation and you want to play games on both, you're gonna have to buy it 2 times. But if you use Steam machine, you would log into your Steam account, you have all your games. Most games have cloud save support, so you'd have your save so you can go back and forth. I would love to see like ways that they could also maybe integrate the Steam Deck with a Steam machine. Like maybe the Steam machine has a docking like port for the Steam Deck, or there all you have to do is click a button and you've connected your Steam Deck to the Steam machine and you can use it as a controller. Little things like that. I think it would be really cool. And for timing wise, we've gone into the whole like everything that PlayStation and Xbox are doing, and it's just like one bad decision after another that's just losing a lot of trust with the industry especially, but also with like the community, seeing like a highly successful game like Hi-Fi Rush, doesn't save you from the chopping block for some reason. And then the next day they go on to say, oh, well, we want these kinds of games, and they just describe Hi-Fi Rush. And it's just, ridiculous. And then we have a little bit on PlayStation to talk about in a little bit too, but basically it's just one thing after another with them. So I would love to see an alternative and, a way to integrate with the Steam Deck and PC ecosystem, because it's so much more consumer friendly in that regard.
Yeah.
Because again, cross-platform purchasing, cross-platform saves,
exactly.
The deals that you can find, bundles, emulation, your library goes from whatever's on the PlayStation. So like, let's say PS5, you can go back to the PS4 and you have maybe some PS3 and PS2 games on like PS Now. But, that's still in like, let's say at the high end, like a couple thousand. On PC, you get the console, you have all your games that you've purchased, but Steam itself has tens of thousands of games. I think they have close to 100,000 games just on Steam. And then you have games that aren't on Steam, so they're on Epic or GOG or itch.io, and then you have emulation. And your library goes from, the couple thousand on PlayStation to hundreds of thousands on PC. And the Steam machine theoretically would take full advantage of that.
Yeah, with like the thing about like should we want a Steam Deck 2 or Steam machine? Like the clear answer is why not both, right? Like you definitely want both. I am in the camp that thinks we can wait a little longer for a Steam Deck 2. I think we've like collectively we've all sort of thought of maybe holiday 2025 as being the time frame, and that feels right for a Steam Deck 2. But if it's holiday 2026, I bet that would still be great as well, right? Like I'm not gonna begrudge them for waiting another year or anything like that. But with regard to like the Steam machine specifically, yeah, there's so much that's happened in the last 11 years that would make a quote unquote Steam machine. I don't think they would call it a Steam machine, right?
No.
I don't think they'd go back to that branding.
No,
but
they would not.
They
would not go back down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And one thing you didn't touch on, right, is what made the Steam Deck successful in terms of one of the things that made it successful, right, is specifically that they learned their lessons from like Steam machines, right? So like it would be driven, so a new Steam Deck console would be driven from Valve, so they probably wouldn't be a Lenovo console or a Dell Alienware console. It would be Valve's Steam Deck console.
They need to keep it to like one, maybe two models at most, and it all has to come from one place.
Yeah, but the same as what the Steam Deck has done, right? Like, so maybe there are other handhelds other than the Steam Deck, but it's still, the Steam Deck is the SKU, right? Like that's what you're looking at, and everything else, like the Ally, the Go, whatever, that's just bonus, which is great. And I would imagine the same thing for Steam machines or Steam Deck consoles, where you would see the same sort of pattern, whether or not it's, you know, SteamOS or Windows or whatever, because that's the beauty of PC, right? Is you can play on either operating system, just not Mac. That's
just on any operating except for Mac,
except for Mac OS,
which is fair. But
and then, you know, not only have they learned those lessons, but it means that when they're controlling that, they're able to price it more competitively, right? I think you know, we sort of inferred that they were taking a loss on the Steam Deck, but even if they weren't taking a loss on the Steam Deck and those margins were just razor thin, right? That is all enabled by the fact that their goal is to sell games on the Steam store, just like consoles, right? It's adopting that model. So if they're able to price a PC competitive, like a desktop sort of PC, one that you would presumably plug into your TV, if they're able to price it competitively compared to a PS5 or Xbox Series X, and also have competitive power with those, right?
Yeah,
that would be insane, absolutely insane. And then
right,
Steam Controller 2, things like that.
Steam Controller 2. I made a mock-up on the opinion article. It's such a jank looking thing, but that's really all they need to do is just take the two like handles of the Steam Deck and just put them together. To me, that's the perfect controller. Maybe a little bit more spacing. I'm looking at right now. Those analog sticks are basically touching, but for the most part, I think
same for the trackpads. I am looking at it, and they're
it's
millimeter apart.
Yeah, so maybe not exactly like that, but I think they're set up for that kind of success too. Like they have, like, they've already worked with AMD creating a custom APU for the Steam Deck, so I'm sure they could work on something with AMD a bit more. And I was looking at,
I wouldn't real quick, I wouldn't rule out NVIDIA. Like, I know that you know, NVIDIA is a lot further behind on this than AMD is. But just based on what I've seen, I would not rule out NVIDIA, right?
Oh, like, no, I was actually about to go in. I looked at, I was doing a little bit of research and looked at like I guess parts that would kind of be on par with a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, like an equivalent PC, and it was much lower than I expected. Like, from what I remember, they were kind of pricing like the GPU range was around a 2070 to a 3070. And I think they were airing more on 3070 because of the ray tracing capabilities. But even still, like a 3070 itself, I was finding them for like $500 just by themselves. Like, if they can work out a deal with Valve and they're able to create like a custom CPU with AMD, you know, I feel like they would be able to find these deals and get these parts and be able to price it competitively. Just even if they're just matching a PS5, I would take a PC with like PS5 equivalent performance over a PlayStation 5 Pro. You know, I would, because just the capabilities of what it can do and the way the games that are available and the game, like the library that's available, the games you can get. and just the fact that it would be cross-platform. Again, I really love my Steam Deck. That is what I game primarily on. So if I buy a game on the Steam Deck or for my Steam Deck, and then I can bring it to my like console without paying anything extra, I'm so happy. So I would prefer that, and I think I would take a little bit of a performance hit versus like the newest consoles to have the PC ecosystem.
Yeah. I think it would be hard to match like a PS5 Pro or if Xbox is still thinking about a mid-gen refresh, maybe hard to match that.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly it seems like they could theoretically come in above a PS5, Xbox Series X, and still be competitive with pricing. And I think that would be huge. And going further with like that NVIDIA stuff, right? Like we have, like I said, they are further behind when it comes to like Linux support. Yeah. But they seem to be warming up to the idea, right? So, and some of this isn't graphics or gamer related. Some of this is just, they run high compute data centers. And so when you're doing that, you start to embrace open source, just like Microsoft did. So they just announced, I saw in Gaming on Linux that, they're going to default to the open kernel modules for their drivers. And likewise, we wouldn't really have NVK in the state that it's in if those open kernel modules didn't exist in the first place, right? So NVIDIA starting that effort seemed to really like catalyze how quickly like NVK has developed. And it has been quick, right? Like it's only, I don't know, 1.5 years, I think, since it was introduced into Mesa, I believe.
Yeah, that's very quick.
Right?
That's very, very quick. Yeah.
It was in development before that, but it just got introduced into Mesa about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago. And it's been developing quickly. So I'm very curious to see just what they can accomplish. They meaning, the entire open source community, and however NVIDIA decides to embrace it or not, over the course of the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Hopefully, I would love to see. I've had much more luck with NVIDIA GPUs over AMDs. So I feel like I personally prefer it over AMDs. Like nothing wrong with AMD. I love what they're doing and I love how forward thinking they are in a lot of ways. But I really like NVIDIA's technology and like especially with like DLSS. I'm a sucker for DLSS. I think they are the top of the line upscaling, which unfortunately we see a lot of companies and like developers relying on that to run on like lower end hardware. So, if a Steam machine was using that, I think that would be a huge, huge deal if they were able to utilize that technology in a Steam machine. Like it would be punching way above its weight. And I think it would be fantastic. I would buy one immediately. Or if I might make Steam Machine HQ if Valve will if Valve ever makes one and they decide to send one to me, I'll make an entire website just dedicated to that.
Just for that.
Just for I mean, I did it for the Steam Deck, so
yeah.
As long as they make just one model. Just do one model. I don't want to test the game on like 2-3 different models. Just please give me one.
Yes.
Like I can't do more.
No, don't do more. Don't accept more work. No. One thing I had in a video where I was talking about a Steam Deck 2 was that maybe, right, if like this is the best of all worlds, right? Like what if Valve could accomplish an ecosystem? So Steam Deck 2 has an Oculink port. You dock it and it docks to a Steam Deck 2 enhanced dock that has an eGPU that they commissioned, right? Like they worked with NVIDIA on this eGPU. And then of course the Steam controller too and things like that. So like what if you get the ultimate like Switch, what people envisioned with the Switch, the ultimate experience of that, where you get, as powerful of a handheld experience as you can get, but when you dock it, you get as powerful of a docked experience as you can get, and not just the handheld performance on a big screen. So I mean, like that feels like it's way more years out than either of these two options. But it also, I would bet that I mean, that's not saying much, but like Valve R&D, I would bet that they're looking into it, right? Like they're thinking about that as a possibility.
I've thought about that as well, basically turning an eGPU into a docking station, and then that being for the Steam Deck, so it can enhance what the Steam Deck has. Part of me thinks that I don't. How would you say that should be priced? Because like that one is way more specialized and requires someone to also invest in a Steam Deck, whereas like a Steam machine just by itself, it doesn't require any other hardware to use it. So like for something that specialized to enhance the power by that much, what would you say, like for you personally, like what would the price have to be for an eGPU dock to justify, if let's say if you already have a Steam Deck?
Yeah. Well, I'd be willing to spend a decent amount, but that doesn't make me the average person, right? So this is a very difficult problem in terms of how do you price something like this, because if you just have one or the other, you just have a Steam machine and you just have a handheld, and then you just sell those two things separately. Well, that gives you so much wiggle room, right, in terms of pricing. But what I would pay $400 to $500 like pretty easily for just an eGPU dock. But that's also what a GPU costs, right?
Yeah.
So
then let me ask, like, do you think that that could be justified to Valve? Because like, let's say with the Steam Deck, they price it that low, but they can make it back with sales, from Steam. And if people buy a Steam Deck, they're most likely getting most of their games from Steam.
Yeah.
But if they do the GPU dock, they wouldn't really be guaranteeing more purchases from Steam. So that they might not make back the money if they're pricing it lower and competitive, which could mean that they need to increase it because, if they want to have a sizable difference to give a Steam machine feel, it's going to have to be pretty powerful in a good enclosure with good cooling and, whatever else they decide to add into it. So I don't know.
Yeah, you're basically building a Steam machine just without the APU, right? Without the CPU.
Yeah.
So it's questionable as to whether that like cost benefit is worth it to Valve. Because like I can't answer that.
Because like I feel like if it was a Steam machine by itself, it could convince people who don't have Steam, and that would lead to more sales. Versus, if it's required, if you have to have a Steam Deck for it, then the people are already on Steam. They're already purchasing Steam games.
Yeah.
So maybe getting this would, increase sales for like games that can't run too well on it, like Returnal and Dragon's Dogma, or if you want to push like, Cyberpunk at 60 frames per second and things like that. But on that last note, they wouldn't be rebuying a game. So Valve wouldn't make money on that sale. So I think that it's something I could see it happening for sure, and I think it would be really interesting. I just don't see it replacing a Steam machine, and I also don't see it being super cheap because it's one of those where like I would say it's like a premium experience for people who already have the Steam Deck versus a full new console, because on top of that like that's a huge investment, because so you'd be getting a Steam Deck on the low end at $400, and then you'd spend $500 for the eGPU, which altogether would make the Steam machine around like $900, which I think is way too much. I don't think anyone would invest in that if they didn't already have a Steam Deck.
Right. At that point, you're literally buying a full PC, right?
Exactly. But I think that like a Steam machine priced at like 500 to 600 is much more feasible. It's giving a full experience all in one and doesn't require anything else. So I think it's definitely more plausible that they'll do a full individual console versus an eGPU. But I would like to see something like that for like for the people who are more invested in the Steam Deck and don't need, like, maybe there's like an option if you already have a Steam Deck, you can get this instead, and it's the same GPU, and like you said, the same thing as a Steam machine, just without the CPU. So
exactly,
if they do that, they could release like maybe a version of the Steam Machine with everything in it, and then the version of the Steam Machine that just acts as a dock and has everything except the CPU. And that to me, they can give options for that because it's the same parts in it, the same experience.
Yeah.
So I could justify them doing 2 models like that.
Yeah. Either way, I think that they are like clearly building in support for broader compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of that might just be SteamOS for all, right? Like it may not be a specific effort. It may be just they're trying to increase compatibility across the board so that we can have SteamOS for all. But the thing is, it's Valve. So we know 2 things. One of those things is that we won't know until they tell us, which is the last minute. And the second thing is they're going to roll up their sleeves and just do, like, even if, NVIDIA is not chipping in, whoever is not chipping in, they're going to roll up their sleeves and do it themselves. So it'll be fun to watch it develop.
No, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it, and I really hope they bring back the Steam Machine because I love the concept of it. And again, the PC ecosystem is just so consumer friendly.
Yeah,
it's just compared to like consoles. Like nothing against PS5 and Xbox. Like I have my PS5, I love it, but I would usually buy a game on Steam versus PlayStation if I know I can run it. Like if I know my desktop PC can run like Dragon's Dogma 2 and I know the PS5 will run it at 30, I will always choose Steam. Always.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have is just how much power like Valve is growing fast, right? Steam is growing fast.
Yeah.
And they like, to be clear, I don't know, like I can't think of a game store that I like better than Steam. So this is not me saying I like, PS5 better. It's just I worry about all the power being concentrated in one place,
like a monopoly kind of situation.
Yeah, like that. And it just feels like Steam, like you said, right? Like trust is eroding in Xbox and PlayStation. And I only see that continuing to happen, especially for Xbox, maybe less so for PlayStation. And not really at all for Nintendo.
See, PlayStation, Nintendo does whatever they do. They're not gonna people
Correct.
already are upset with the things that they do.
Correct.
So
right, it doesn't change.
But it doesn't change their game selling because they make amazing games no matter what. And again, I feel like I've mentioned before, but I love how they treat their employees. PlayStation,
which by the way, those 2 things are like causal, I think, right? Like they're not just correlated. I think they're causal. They treat their employees better. They don't rush their games, which mean the games are better. Like I think one leads to the other pretty directly.
And I think that because they treat their employees better, their games end up being better quality because it's just much more like they're way more creative. They're way more enjoyable to just play. And they're not afraid to what is it? They're not afraid to delay their games to make sure that it's up to their standards. And we've seen that they're not afraid to just cancel and redo games from scratch, as we've seen with like Metroid Prime 4, which that's not confirmed, but why else would they basically restart development of it?
Yeah. Well, I think even without going through Metroid Prime 4, I feel like the story was very similar for Metroid Prime, right? Like not that they necessarily started all the way over, but there was a lot of like back and forth, right? Like and a lot of waves. Maybe that was all pre-production, but a lot of waves that went through in terms of really honing in on what Metroid Prime was. So yeah, Nintendo, they care, right? Like they care about the quality of their games. And we can say a lot about like the bad sides and downsides to Nintendo. None of these corporations are innocent per se, right? Like I don't like the sentence that or the sentence that Gary Bowser received, right? Like that seemed quite harsh. But and there are things like that I clearly don't agree with Nintendo, but do they make great games? Personally, I think so.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. It's hard not to see the games they make. It's hard not to admit that the games they make are great. Like their titles, like there's a reason like Mario is basically a household name. You know, their games and why they have so many evergreen titles and why they go after emulation as much. I think they know that their games that they make, especially in the past, are classics. You know, and it's sad to see because they want full control of those classics, and that could mean just not doing anything with them, you know. So and actually just time to segue. One of the things that we also did recently, so we saw that Majora's Mask got a full recompilation into a native PC port, and that is a guide. I actually wrote a guide about that I think it was about 24 hours ago. I think it was very close to now, and like it blew up, you know. And I think it just goes to show like how hungry people are. They want to be able to play the Nintendo stuff, but they don't necessarily agree with how Nintendo treats their older games. And Majora's Mask is one of the two classics from the Nintendo 64 era. So I think it's super cool seeing this port. It's very feature complete. It's got full Steam Deck support, full controller support, 16 by 10 resolution. It's high frame rate support, so playing at 60 frames per second feels wonderful. It's a phenomenal thing that they did, and I really love how they did it too. So they worked on a full, I guess, program that will recompile games into native PC ports, recompile like Nintendo 64 games into these PC ports if they've been decompiled, which I think is phenomenal. And hopefully we'll see other games like that in the future. But, Majora's Mask coming, basically having a PC port is just, it's nuts how well it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like to clarify that a little bit, right? So, for people that are wondering how this tech works, right? So games are often written in, let's say, C, right? C is a language that can compile to multiple different platforms, right? So it's sort of platform agnostic. It doesn't care which platform it is because it's just going to compile to that platform, whether that's Linux, Windows, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo 64, right? When it's compiled, it is in assembly. And in that assembly, the instructions are very specific to the platform that it is, whether, again, that's in 64 or whatever. So the goal of a quote unquote decompilation project is to take that assembly and sort of reverse engineer it back into C language, right? So that you can then compile it to Windows, and now you have a Windows port.
Yeah.
What this project does is it does all of that, and decompilers have existed for some time, but what it's doing is it's translating basically what the instruction is for like Nintendo 64, taking that and mapping that to sort of an instruction abstracted into C, right? But in instruction that goes to Windows or Linux or something like that. And so like the fact that it does this, and it does this at sort of a system wide level, where now we're going to see these sort of decompilation projects for all N64 games, basically any N64 game except those that use microcodes, is just fascinating, right? So it's really going to accelerate how quickly we're going to see N64 games ported to PC. And those ports are important because you get everything that you just mentioned, Noah. So like widescreen, high frame rate, gyro support, right? So you can do gyro on the Majora's Mask, which is just amazing. And then you can mod on top of that, right? So you can do high res textures, and you can, and then this is different, but it's a decompilation project. What's the Arcanian?
Ship of Arcanian is the Ocarina of Time version.
Yeah. So that's different because it's not using N64 recompiled. But the point is that is like almost a full, like total conversion of, or re-envisioning of Ocarina of Time. And we're going to see a lot more of that because you can just take the code that's there and recompile it, to your heart's content, assuming you can program. So it's pretty neat.
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing like what games are going to work on next. Like I would love to see some like older non-Nintendo games, or just not the normal like Mario, Zelda Nintendo games. Like I'd like to see Kirby 64 get a recompile. You know, I have to think and see like
Core, even though that's Nintendo, but it's a little like
still,
you know, second party,
it's not like the normal like Mario, Zelda, you know,
exactly,
and that's usually the first ones people go to, like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. I think those are like the three big ones that you know the majority of people want, and I get it; they're amazing games, but you know, I would love to see like. I think one thing I'm worried about, though, one thing I will say I'm worried about is if there's all these games that are being, you know, recompiled and they're all in their individual EXEs, that's going to make them much harder to manage versus like having it in an emulator, like let's say with Emulation Station or ESD. You know, we have it all in like a folder and you can just scroll through each one, and it makes it very easy to just pick and choose. You know, if they're all decompiled and then recompiled into native executables, it's going to be much harder to, you know, do that, and now like increase just the folders you have to manage and everything. Once you have it set up, it's not nearly as bad as I'm making it out to be, but it's just something that like is going to be very different from, you know, using emulation and ROMs. But still, though, I would rather have the native ports over the emulation, just for all those different reasons. And I like what Majora's Mask is doing. They are using RT64 to enhance it further. So there's going to be like ray tracing support that's coming, which I just think is nuts. Like it's that insane. They could just add that, you know. So and then they're going to be doing. I think the Majora's Mask PC port, the one that we covered, they are going to have Ocarina of Time come into it later. It's just not ready yet. And then
it seems like they're going to bundle their launchers per se based on like franchises, right? So like we'll probably see a Banjo quote unquote launcher.
I would love that
at some point. Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie. That'd be great.
Hopefully they'll do like a universal launcher similarly to that, where like it might be a little bit on the bigger end, but like I would like to see a universal launcher where they can like you can scroll through any Nintendo 64 game that you've recompiled into a PC port, and kind of similarly to like the launcher for that'll have Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, or you know, Banjo. I would love to see that for like a universal as more Nintendo 64 games get recompiled.
I could see that. I think the reason they're doing it this way is, you know, separating some of those concerns that they have right now. So like, you know, imagining doing sort of a GoldenEye Perfect Dark launcher, for example. That's one where like a lot of the things that you would tweak, like maybe mouse control, gyro control, that sort of thing, are going to map very well to GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, but maybe not map so well to Banjo Kazooie.
Well, that makes sense. So, but then it takes, again, it's like more things to manage. I'm someone who likes to just open, like, let's say Emulation Station. I love having a graphical front end and just everything's right there. You know, that's why I never used like Steam ROM Manager. I did not like it because I wanted it all in one contained front end. And like, as much as, you could say that Steam's game mode could be that front end, I just did not like it as much as like Emulation Station, where I could get like their like box art, I could get like game photos, I could get descriptions. You know, ESD can do manuals now. I thought that I like having that experience to kind of give me some more, I guess, some more artwork and images from the older that remind me of the old times. That's I think the best way that I can put it.
That's fair. That's very fair, I think. And then also, you know, like Steam wasn't built for that, right? Like it's not built for libraries of they're trying their best, right? Libraries of tens of thousands of games. But you see a lot of updates, especially for the first year of Steam Deck. We saw a lot of updates of like, okay, making it faster again for large libraries, making it faster again for large libraries. So it's something that they, you know, it's not the primary purpose of Steam.
No, but you know, but that's why, again, I prefer to have that graphical front end. But moving on to another topic we have. See, we talked a little bit about Nintendo, why don't we talk about PlayStation a little bit and some of what they're doing? Ooh. So there's actually two things I want to talk about with PlayStation. Do you want the good news or the bad news first?
Let's go with the good news.
Good news? All right. Yeah. It's actually not something that Sony's doing. It's actually more independent. Chiaki 4 Deck is an open source version of the Remote Play app where you're able to actually access and use and stream your PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 to your console or whatever you have Chiaki 4 Deck on. In this case, on the Steam Deck. Last week, they started testing the ability to connect to your PlayStation 4 or 5 without needing to port forward when you're not home. Let me phrase that, because when you are home, you don't really need to. But when you're not at home, before this, you would have to port forward. But they actually were reverse engineering the UDP hole punching that like Sony does to make remote connection when you're away from your console work. So they were testing it, and I wanted to cover just the test, but actually earlier today, or I think it was yesterday, technically, they released it into stable. So now everyone should have access to this. So to do it, you just log into, you're going to log into your, your PC or your PSN account? Oh, man. You're going to log into your PSN account, and then after that, you should be able to connect. It should work on most connections. I think they noted that some might not support UDP hole punching, so you might still have to port forward. But I think the majority of networks, you should be able to.
Yeah, I have like a dual router situation, so it probably won't work for me. I'll probably have to figure that out. I've been meaning to change that. But yeah, this is pretty neat. And, Chiaki 4 Deck, they've been consistently updating. So it was so cool to see like HDR support come pretty quickly after the Steam Deck OLED launched, and then have just the ability to play HDR remote play on your Steam Deck, which was already a step above what PS Portal was able to do, even as PS Portal was releasing. So pretty fascinating stuff. So cool to see this too. It's always good to have like these sort of open source efforts to take the technology that's already being used and kind of apply it into make it easier for use on your Steam Deck or something else. Yeah.
No, I think I think it's awesome that they did this. And
yeah,
I think for a lot of people, like being able to play when you're away, like is pretty awesome. Most of the time I'm home, so it's not something that I'd say I'm really worried about for me personally. But
same.
I think for the majority of people, like I think having that alternative is really awesome. And that's the good news. So hopefully.
What's the bad news, Noah?
Oh man. So Sony, or I guess PlayStation in this case, after Xbox made their studio cuts, decided to start trying to one up Microsoft. And they did a little bit good. They walked back, the Helldivers 2 PSN requirement, which is a step in the right direction. But then they decided to not only keep the restrictions for Helldivers 2, so that it still can't be purchased in the over 177 different countries that cannot make a PSN account. They just don't have support there. They also put those restrictions onto Ghost of Tsushima. And unlike Helldivers 2, where they were going to make the entire game need a PSN requirement, Ghost of Tsushima does not need a PlayStation Network account connection if you are playing single player. They only require it for multiplayer. So essentially, you could play it without a PSN account. I think for majority of people, like that's the big like, I guess selling
most people
point for it.
Yeah, most people aren't buying this game for multiplayer.
Exactly. So I think in those 177 different countries, they're not going to be able to play Ghost of Tsushima at all, even though they don't technically need an account that they can't create. So it's kind of like a big. I hate to say it because like if they it's hard for me to put into words, but like
also
yeah,
like we spoke about this last week when like the Helldivers 2 stuff was just bubbling up, right?
Yeah.
So the podcast episode launched on Monday, where a lot of stuff had developed by the time it launched on Monday, but we talked about it on Friday, where it was still very much kind of just beginning, right? And so one thing from that Friday episode that I still feel like is like, I'm not personally concerned about the PSN requirement, right?
No.
So like, yeah, if for example, for Ghost of Tsushima, if it wasn't restricted in those countries, yeah, it's not a big deal, right? Because again, you only need the PSN for multiplayer, or if you want to do the PlayStation overlay, or you want the trophy sync, like those are all reasonable reasons to connect your PSN account. But the problem is you don't, I could reasonably not want to do those things. And if I live in one of these countries, I still can't buy it. And I think that's going to be interesting because it's going to hurt them, except it's going to be a lot quieter for Ghost of Tsushima than it was for Helldivers 2. But it's going to hurt them more, right? Because the thing about Helldivers 2 is that I don't really I don't know, right? I can't predict the future, but I don't really expect it to have like a tail. Like it's super popular, but I expect that it's one of those games it's going to be really popular right now, and maybe as another game kind of lands in this sort of area, it sort of takes the zeitgeist, right? But Ghost of Tsushima is the sort of game that people will buy over time, right? It's the opposite. It's not going to have a big launch, I don't think. It's not going to sell. It's certainly not going to sell Helldivers numbers up front, if at all. And it won't even match the second or third best-selling game on PC, right? It's going to launch a lot lower than that. So I would think that what they would want in that scenario is to get as many sales across the world as possible for anyone that is interested, because the interest is going to be a lot lower than their typical Sony game, even though this was a really popular game. So this just really hurts them, I think. And it's going to be a quiet pain. Some people are speaking up now, but overall it's not going to have the same vigor, right, around it that the Helldivers 2 movement had. So this feels like a crossroads for Sony, where they can sort of really kind of continue the goodwill that they've been accruing in the PC space, or they can turn it all around and dump it all in a fire. We'll see what they choose.
And you did mention earlier when we were talking about Xbox and PlayStation how like the Xbox stuff is going to be a little bit worse overall than the PlayStation stuff, and I think this is precisely why. The decisions that they're making are not affecting people with a PlayStation, which is their main console. It's affecting people on a secondary platform, which I think is very important, and I don't think they can afford, for the long run, I don't think they can afford to lose the PC support. But Xbox, the decisions they made kind of affect everyone because they were closing studios, not just like PC only studios or anything like that. Though Xbox definitely needs PC way more than PlayStation. But I think for the long run, like, Square Enix made a similar, this happened today, and this actually isn't on our list of topics, today. But Square Enix basically released a financial report where they were down way more than expected, and they decided to start shifting their stance to more multi-platform releases. And that includes Xbox, Nintendo, and PC. And I think that's just going to be where people are going to start having to move, because going to one console is not going to be enough anymore. I think the only way people could get away with that is just making a game on PC, because the space for PC is just so massive. So I think in the long run, they're going to have to switch their stance. PlayStation will. And they're going to have to really pander to like the PC community, because I don't think they can afford to lose PC gamers. And the decisions that they're making purely are affecting PC, and we see it. I mean, the whole Helldivers walkback was because of the outrage from PC gamers, and they just review bombed Helldivers 2. So like they saw firsthand like what a bad decision could do, for the PC space, especially since PC gamers, they are usually at each other's throats or at each other's throats. But if someone does something really bad that everyone agrees is bad, boy, do they unite. And they come like a storm.
Yeah. Especially ones that are trained to work together like the Helldivers community was.
Oh yeah. they bred that one.
Yeah. I think the only thing I can say sort of in Sony's favor, I guess you could say, is that they seem like they're still like they're confused, right? Like not everybody seems to have like this whole country restriction thing, right? Like the PSN requirement was there from the beginning for Helldivers 2. They had to turn it off, blah blah blah. We've heard it all by now, right? But the question is, if that was the case, why didn't they restrict those countries in advance? And the only real answer is just they probably didn't realize it, right? Like they probably didn't think that far ahead.
Yeah.
So now these are things that they have to start thinking about, and they have to figure out what their strategy is. Yeah. So my closest thing I can do to give them benefit of the doubt is that they haven't thought about these problems in detail. They're thinking about them now. Hopefully, as they think about them, they'll come out the other side with better decisions, right? So like maybe they will have figured out the PSN thing where it's not required in these regions, and you can buy it, or there's an alternative PSN, or they launch PSN in those regions, right? There are a number of options here. They're probably figuring out which option they're going to go with, and hopefully that'll all be figured out. But in the meantime, the problem is that people can't buy the game, especially on a platform like PC, which is you expect someone that's a PC gamer expects this to be my library, right? Like if I can't buy something on PS5, big deal. If I can't buy it on Xbox, big deal. But if I can't buy it on PC, then what are you even doing?
I hope for the best, because I really do like PlayStation's games. I think they, especially compared to most first party games, not including Nintendo, because Nintendo's in a class of their own. I love PlayStation's first party games. Like I can name the ones that I like enjoyed so much versus like Xboxes, which I probably can't name as many of them. I can name Hi-Fi Rush. Come on, Xbox.
But even outside of like the concept of like first party, right? Even when we're just talking about big publishers, like Sony is at the top for me. I'm not thinking about Ubisoft games most of the time. I'm not thinking about every once in a while. I care about a Square Enix game, but not all the time. Sony games, I care almost all the time about whatever they're publishing.
No, and they show that they have quality. I mean, just going through the Uncharted series, Ratchet and Clank, Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, the Marvel Spider-Man series, like Ghost of Tsushima. Like they've got.
I'm a big fan of Sackboy. Sackboy was really good.
Oh man, I would give anything for them to bring back Little Big Planet, like the actual Little Big Planet.
Yeah. I never got too into Little Big Planet, but I would be, if I would have been devastated, right? So I definitely want them to. They did archive a lot of those levels on archive.org, right?
I believe so.
I believe it was anything. I think anything that was rated like 2 stars or above somehow got archived on archive.org, which is
I really hope
that's pretty cool.
I hope so. Like I remember I had Little Big Planet 1, and I would play it with my sister from time to time when we were really young, obviously. But like I love those DLC and the expansions that they had where they added new levels and it was all themed. So there was like a Pirates of the Caribbean one, which added water to the game. So like you can make levels with water in it. I just thought that was the coolest thing. And they kept on going with it for like future games. And they did like Marvel, Disney stuff. So they had The Incredibles, I believe, for one of them. And then they also had a Marvel one. and they had an Adventure Time one, and it's just really cool seeing what they did with Little Big Planet. I would love for that to come back.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I was just one of those people that was complaining about the floaty physics.
Yes.
I'm I love 2D platforming games, but I love them for like that precision and stuff like that. So it never clicked with me, but it's still a good game. It just wasn't for me.
I can understand that. One thing I do want to touch on, just in general, it doesn't have to be a long touch. I want to just say last week was a massive for indie titles. Like
insane.
Phenomenal indie titles that released. Like there was like at least 12 that I could count just in the span of a week, and 6 of them all released on the same day.
May 9th. May 9th will go down in legend.
I know, right? So I'm curious, like, have you played the games that were released from last week, or which games have you played? Because I went through and I got all of them. So
yeah,
I played a little bit of each, but I'm curious which ones you did.
I haven't played a lot yet. So I played Animal Well. I definitely played that. So I played about 45 minutes of that. I don't think I'm far enough yet where like everybody's calling it a masterpiece, right? But so far it's extremely good.
Keep playing. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. I believe I will. Yeah. But it's really good. The art and the lighting and the tech, like everything put together is really gorgeous. So the lighting effects that are in there, and I'm not going to spoil like when you first see them, but you know what it reminded me of? Geometry Wars.
I could see that.
You can see that, right? Yeah. And like Geometry Wars, like the art is super simple, but the way they put it together, right? It was just something we hadn't seen before for art that was that simple. Animal Well was really good. I'll tell you what I picked up, because I think that's the only thing I played. But I want to go on a spree this weekend of playing all of these games, or this week. But I bought the Operation Guns DLC for Vampire Survivor. I bought, what is it, 1000 Resist?
Yeah,
what it's called.
So I play a couple chapters of it. It's good. I'm so into the story. Just after 2 chapters, I was like, "Yo, why is this happening?" Especially, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it. But there's just one part where you kind of find out like what sets you on the path to finding out like the core of the story, and it's like the most like what the fuck moment. Like I just like the last thing that the person says is like, "Oh, wait, hold up. What?"
Yeah.
Like
I love that.
It's so good. But yeah, other than that, what else did you get?
Well, what quick question for that game. What is the genre? Like mechanically speaking.
So it's like it's a story driven. It's more like a walking simulator, and there's like some moments where you kind of there really isn't a lot. It's mostly like I would call it more of a more interactive visual novel, just based on like there's not a ton of like gameplay segments to it. Like you run around, you talk to people, and there are some spots where like you kind of have to dash to certain points, so you have to like hold the left trigger and you move the camera around, and then you dash forward. But that's really it. At least so far. So I would consider it more of an interactive visual novel.
Okay, I like that. I also I'll wrap this up pretty quickly because we got to talk about Hades, which I am playing.
That started the week. That surprisingly started the week.
Exactly. I did also buy Little Kitty Big City, which my daughter has been playing. So I really want to get into it so that like we can talk about it, because she wants to tell me all about how she's stolen people's phones and stuff like that. So I want to get into it so she and I can talk about it. But I haven't started that yet. Rabbit and Steel, which looks bizarre and like a shmup / like rating shmup or something like that. So kind of reminiscent of an MMO. I haven't played this, but I did play the demo. Crow Country was already like, it was high. Yeah, it was super high on my list. So this is like a reminiscent of like RE1, Resident Evil 1. Just that sort of survival horror thing. Also reminiscent, I suppose, of Signalis, right? Again, that sort of game. I think those are the main ones. And then yes, I have been playing Hades 2. Not a lot. I think I played about an hour and a half. I still haven't beaten the headmistress.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, the thing is, I didn't really play a lot of Hades 1, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good at it yet. Like, I'm not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
I bought Hades 1 when it was early access, and then I'm like, oh, it's still early access, let me wait till launch. I don't have that same feeling with Hades 2, because this game, it feels like it's done. I
Yeah,
know it's
no,
not done, but it feels like it's
Hades
done.
2 is nuts. I can't believe they
Yeah.
released such a complete, like what feels like such a complete package in early access. Like that raises the bar, I would say.
Yeah.
So of all those games, would you say like Hades 2 is like your top right now?
Yeah, I suspect that Animal Well will go higher, right?
Okay.
I love those sort of games. I love what's the name of that? Shoot, Outer Wilds. I love Outer Wilds, right? That's an all-time game for me. I love those sort of like detective style games where you just figure stuff out. There's a old school puzzle platformer Metroidvania called Full Bore that I love, that this is reminding me of. So I expect Animal Well to go even higher, but yeah, Hades is the one for now.
No, Animal Well is going to be actually insane. Like, and can you believe that it was developed by one person over 7 years? Like, one person created that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
insane.
just nuts to me.
Yeah,
like
that level of craftsmanship.
Yeah, right. It makes me want to play it right now. To be honest, just talking about Animal Well makes me want to play it. But like,
how many hours do you have?
Oh, man. I have to look, because for whatever reason, sometimes Steam will register when I play games offline, and sometimes it just won't. So there was a couple of games where I had like 40 to 50 hours, and then I noticed it was offline, so I went online and it just dropped all the way down to 4. So I have to look to make sure, but I know it's at least 15 hours. Like, it's just constant
So
going back and forth. I'm having a blast.
You
just
reach
like
credits.
trying to find the secrets.
Yeah, but you reached credits, I presume.
After
you've reached credits by now, I presume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
because I heard it's like really you can get to the end like around 7-8 hours.
Yes,
6, 7, 8
but
hours.
there's so much more to it, and that's just kind of what I've been like looking for.
Yeah.
And all those games you mentioned are amazing. There were a couple of others that I got from that week too that I think are really cool. There's this game. There's like V Rising and Path of Atra are two that went from early access into the 1.0, and I count those because those are full releases now.
Absolutely.
So I did get a Path of Atra since I already had V Rising. Crypt Master.
Path of Atra, is that like a traditional roguelike?
It's more traditional. It's an odd one. It's kind of hard for me to explain, but basically you choose your race, class, and a religion, and it dictates like how you interact with the world. And you kind of just go from level to level, leveling up, getting new equipment, killing enemies. You can sacrifice equipment to boost your currently equipped, items. It's it's interesting. I'm actually surprised it's not really talked about more. It's really cool. Especially because like on deck there is an auto battle option. So you can hold the left trigger down and you'll see your character just run through and kill everyone there. And I think that's really awesome.
That's great.
Then there was a Crypt Master, which was an interesting one as well. So it comes off as like a dungeon crawler, but I think of it more as like a comedy, more comedy and story driven. So you go through a dungeon, and to interact with objects, you will either type or say words. So like you can go up to you go up to a chest, let's say, and the Crypt Master will come up and be like, "What is this?" And then you'll have to guess and type in like what the item could be. Or if you go up to an enemy, you'll have to type in what you want to do to the enemy. So there's like it's a cool way to like, I guess, structure a dungeon crawler, I would say.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And then one other one that I really liked, which I don't think is talked about too much, is this game called Rogue Voltage. So it's another roguelike, but the big thing with it is instead of like doing regular attacks, you actually wire together machines, and you wire them in specific ways to chain skills, which are used to attack. And I think it's just a really cool concept that the developer put into the package.
That one's looks like it's a deck builder currently in early access.
That is the game. I guess, I would consider it a deck builder because you're building a deck of machines that you're placing on the circuit board where you're wiring everything up. But it's just it's a cool concept, and I'm just kind of shocked that it's not like, I guess when it comes to like creativity, I'm surprised that it's not talked about a bit more.
Yeah. So you just cost me another $67. I just added Rogue Voltage, Crypt Master, Path of Atra, and I pronounce it Indica. I hadn't bought Indica, so I'm gonna add that to my cart. Here's the thing, with Hi-Fi Rush and Tango shutting down, I'm just currently, especially because for us, it's a business expense, right? I'm just currently in the mood of just, if I want it, I'm just going to buy it. So I've traditionally been very frugal and stuff like that. And I wait for a sale, or I wait for usually it's not that I wait for a sale. It's I wait for the moment that I'm going to play the game. Right.
Yeah. No, then that's the right way to do it.
I think so. So so that's why I'm not recommending doing what I'm doing now to everybody else. Cause I do think the best way is, when you're going to play, you're ready to sit down and play Rogue Voltage, then you can buy Rogue Voltage. It's probably only, less than a gig to install anyway. So you'll probably be fine. But because of the Tango Arcane Austin, I've just been in the mood to like really go the extra mile to support, small developers, small games. So I did buy the games that I mentioned for that May 9th day where I bought Crow Country, Rabbit and Steel, Little Kitty, Big City. I bought Hades before that. I'm about to pull the trigger on this cart right here.
And there's actually some that are coming out this week too that I would recommend checking out, but I don't know if I can talk about those ones yet. I can't remember if it's ones that I can talk about, but I do know of some games that are like coming out this week that I've been enjoying, and I'm looking forward to talking about over the next couple of days.
So assuming you can't talk about anything, I'm just going to look at what is on the calendar for releases. It's a little quiet. So it looks like Fabledom did come out today. Homeworld 3 should be out today as well. Braid Anniversary Edition.
See, Braid is a classic. Braid is a classic, and I really love the game and concept of it. I don't know if I want to rebuy it, just because I feel like I beat the game, I played it. I don't really need it again.
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to revisit Braid. I'm with you.
Yeah, I like it. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing against how great of a game it was, and how I would probably consider it like when I first started noticing independent games was Braid.
Yes. Yeah. That was that time.
So
also this week, Thursday, is it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday is Ghost of Sushi. Here's one I'm looking forward to, and this is probably one of the ones you can't speak about. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I am very much looking forward to that game coming out on Thursday.
I don't have that game, but I love how it looks.
Yeah, and it looks so good.
It really does. If I had to say a game that I'm looking forward to, there's a couple. I won't say whether or not I'm going through them or not, but there's two that I'm very much actually there's three that I'm very much looking forward to. If you like Undertale, then you'll probably like Athenian Rhapsody, which is basically a more colorful version of Undertale. And I love the humor of it. I talked to this was a solo developer as well. I talked to Nico at PAX 2023 and 2024, and we even got a photo together. It was good times. But
hold on. I have to read this description to the audience.
Yeah.
Forge your own story and explore the world of Athens in Athenian Rhapsody, a Souls-like platonic dating simulator with Cooking Mama and WarioWare style battle mechanics And by that, I mean it's a choose your own adventure action RPG with the ability to trade entire playthroughs between friends. I'm buying this.
Yeah. So
that
basically when you as you're playing the game, you're creating your own Rhapsody, and that's saved, and you can share that Rhapsody with other people. So you can see how everyone played their version, like their playthrough, what they did.
Yeah.
I think it's just such a cool concept, and I love the guy. He's so funny, and I'm very excited for Athenian Rhapsody.
I'll say by the time you publish this podcast, it'll be out. I imagine it's
yes. This episode should be released tomorrow. So yeah, the game will already be out, which means if we were to review it, it would be out tomorrow as well. The other one, or the other two, one or like the second one, is actually Mullet Mad Jack, which I played the demo of during the Steam Next Fest, and I loved it.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. It's gorgeous. It's runs well on the Steam Deck. It's all about just fast paced, like kill everything as fast as you can so you can get to the end. It's roguelike, so you're getting like upgrades as you're going through it too. It's so cool.
Yeah, I played that game during the demo as well. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. So that one's out on Wednesday. So just a couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fun. All right, cool.
And then the last one
hurt my pockets.
Yeah, I'm trying to. That's my goal. And then the last one I wanted to bring up was actually this game called Geno Panic, and that one had a demo a while back. And it's another Metroidvania, but I loved the physics, and I love how vibrant and gorgeous the pixel art is, and it sold me on it through the demo. So this is another one where I'm very much looking forward to, and that one is on Friday, I believe.
All right. Yeah, that's another one. It looks really pretty. I'm here for it.
So those three are the ones I'm really looking forward to. There are some others I'm interested in that I'm like looking at right now that I'm like, that looks kind of cool. I might have to buy Lorelei completely. I've been so busy with all the games that we are reviewing that I completely it's almost a guarantee that I will miss some. So Lorelei is one of the ones that I missed, and I'm very sad because now I'm very much looking forward to the release.
Have you played any of the Simogo games? So Sayonara Wild Hearts is probably the one you've played.
I have played Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Yeah, so that one's so good. There was Yearwalk, but I'm thinking of the iOS game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. By the way, I found it earlier on. I just didn't get a chance to mention it to you. That game I was trying to remember, that Zaliver wrote on, it's called Hypnospace Outlaw, the big indie game. So that was the one.
Outlaw, really?
Yep.
All right. I mean, I love Hypnospace Outlaw, so but I just found that really interesting that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. When I was talking about a big indie game, it's big in my circles. That's for sure.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think there's going to be a lot to look forward to, and I'm very excited to see. I guess just kind of excited to see where it's all gonna, like what other indies are going to release. I know that the Rogue Prince of Persia was delayed to May 27th, which is kind of a shame, but like I understand you don't want to follow up Hades 2 with a similar game.
And again, it's very indicative of just what May was, right? Or what May is, because they're still releasing in May. But just it's been bananas with all of these games that are but Hades in particular, I would not want to release close to that game. Just give it its space and give it a couple. I think it was like 2 weeks that it was delayed, right?
Yeah. It's not long. At least they're still releasing in May. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I'm excited about that game.
Right. Well, either way, I think time's up. I think we're going to wrap things up right now. Thank you everybody for watching, and we really appreciate it. The episode, by the time you're watching this, like we said, some of these games will have been released, and we would love to hear what you think of it. Are you going to get Athenian Rhapsody? Are you getting Homeworld 3 or any of those games? Let us know. Thank you, Richard, for being here and being on this episode and talking with me.
Absolutely.
And so next week we should be back to a normal schedule. There are some scheduling conflicts, so we weren't able to release yesterday, or Monday. So next episode should be back on Monday, so we'll be back to a normal upload schedule. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.